Here we are. I keep forgetting to figure out the date. But, okay, so there's a reason I'm wearing sunglasses to start our show today.
He thinks he looks good.
No, it's not it. Our guests are such bright spots in my home group community that the glare coming off of these two guys is just, I couldn't almost.
I thought it was going to be the glare off my forehead.
I didn't want to say that. And Jason's got the beard going now.
It blocks it out a little bit. COVID beard.
So, welcome to another episode of, are we going to name this?
I don't know.
Johnny and Mike George.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mike Marlowe and Johnny Walker, our weekly MHG informational hour here at in our new studio. Our guests today are Mr. Mike Broderick and Mr. Jason Mendoza. We'll get into those two guys. Both have kind of completely different but the same schemes on how their business works, and it's going to be some great information. I promise you that. Couple things. So our swag this week is lunch for 4 at a restaurant of your choice, which is being donated by Shelly Carr from One Guard Home Warranty. So thank you, Kelly. Shelly. So there's going to be a secret phrase that we're going to come up with in the show, and then at the end we're going to, if you can answer the right question, you win the lunch for 4. You do not have to bring Mike and I along, but it is highly suggested. We do highly recommend that. Well, actually, if you just want to give it to the 4 of us, we can.
I know the answer already.
Right. All right, so let's get into it. We'll talk. Let's start with Jason. So, Jason, tell us a little bit about your path into real estate. Where you came from originally and how all that started.
Sure. Well, Johnny, I got started originally in 2003, and I tell a lot of stories, teaching classes and whatnot, but basically I started by buying a duplex in 2003, and one of the things is that was one of my greatest mistakes ever, because I had this 4-plex I could have bought, and if I would have bought that, it would have just been incredible. The duplex had all these other did different things that kind of messed up, but whatever. Bottom line is, from there I ended up going into loans. And so from 2003 to 2008, I was in the loan business. Of course, it crashed hard on us. We learned some valuable lessons. I learned a lot about overextending, negative AM loans, all the different ways that things can go wrong. And so from there, I was out for a little bit, and then about 2010, 2011, I got back in. I started doing flips. 2 of the first flips that I started doing, I ended up with.
Multi-unit or
no, single family. So I started with single family, and I would flip single family homes for a while, and I ended up having to, giving away commissions to realtors. And so one of the guys in my group, I told him, go get a real estate license, do it and whatever, and you can make the commissions and whatever. So he does it, but he didn't know what he was doing. So finally I decided, I'll just get my real estate license and get back in and start doing that. And because I would have people telling me, hey, will you manage for me? Will you do this? Will you do that? And initially I didn't do any property management. I just started acquiring. So I went from flipping single family to flipping multifamily to keeping multifamily to starting to go in that direction. And then, 3.5 years ago, it just got to the point where there was too much chatter about managing that I decided to do that. And I talked to Mark and Jeremy and said, hey, I've got my broker's license at this point. I'd like to do it. If you guys are interested, maybe with my home group. And, it wasn't exactly their game plan. So they said, what if we do something else where you create it, become the preferred partners were what they were starting to call it at that point. And I was like, absolutely, man. I had no intention of leaving. I didn't want to leave, and so I technically didn't. I still have an office here, still interact with all the agents and everything, and we just continue to build our network of property management. And I still do a flip here and there, but more often than not, what I'm doing is just trying to acquire and work on different strategies of building up my rental empire, and at the same time, putting in place, a piece that became integral for me to attract California investors where I'm originally from, because when I would sell something to them, the end question was, how are you going to manage it, or who's going to manage it?
What part of California, if I can remember?
Northern California, Monterey area. And so I just decided to do that, and then it was, it's been a blessing. It's been a blessing and a curse at some times, but more than a blessing, more than anything, because it's just so many different things. But all of the opportunity that continues to open from it, more sales and things like that for me. But more importantly, being able to help all the agents here has been really good because it's increased the amount of people and exposure that I get. And it's been a lot of fun, man. My team, we now have a team down in Yuma. We've got a team downtown. A couple other agents that float around and, work out of their home and do their own thing and whatnot, but all circle kind of really around property management and small residential units.
So just to be clear, so everybody understands,
Yeah.
if they want to call you or talk, it's My Rental Superstore. So it's, if you just explain your program so everybody knows how you can help them.
What we really are is My Rental Superstore. We really do a lot of property management. That's our main core business. We also try to work with the agents. I have agents that call me for anything. So anything rental related, call me. Now, when I say that, it's when you have questions, when you have tenant issues, anything like that, I'm always telling them, call me. I'll help you work through it. I'll tell you.
Get some doozies.
Oh, I get some doozies.
And you and I can attest to that.
Yeah. And I've seen some really weird stuff and everything, but that's the thing, is having us on your side is as an advocate, an informant, someone that can just tell you, hey, this is where I stand. Because a lot of times what happens is the agents get clients and they're doing rental leads and stuff like that, especially new agents. New agents, when you get rental leads and you're doing stuff like, call me, I will walk you through it. I'll tell you what to look for, because there are a lot of bad property managers out there that take advantage of applications and take advantage of other agents and everything by just, kind of putting the fee out there, throwing it out there, and then taking a bunch of applications knowing they're fully not going to actually, rent it to this person. They've already chosen. But they know that they'll get $45, $50 a pop from people applying. We really.
No, nobody would do that.
Yeah, I know, right? We don't run it like that. We really try to stick to, taking the first one in, looking at them, very, very tight windows, so that we're not just, going through all that.
And sometimes bad ones slip through.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Sometimes bad ones slip through. And then another thing that's really important is where I come in a lot of times for agents is when they need to ask the questions, because the questions you need to ask to the property manager are key. Like, for instance, will you accept somebody with a bankruptcy past a set amount of years? Because a lot of times renters, if they don't have bad credit and things like that, they'd be buying. They absolutely would be buying. And so that's one of the things. You're out there, you're talking with them, you're getting them set up so they become a buyer down the road. Okay, yeah, you're not going to make a lot of commission on showing rentals right now, but this is a long game. That's the most important thing that I've learned since 2003 is this is a long-term game.
Would you agree with this statement? If you're a realtor and you're not actually in the rental game, let the professionals handle it. There's so many different aspects that you could miss because you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
We ended up having a kind of a nightmare scenario, and there was no way I could have handled the way it went down without Jason in charge of it. And it all worked out in the long run, but it was
tough.
Just tough on it, and we won't get into the specifics on it, but I was absolutely convinced that that's just not. There's so much to the rental game that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that a lot of agents don't know through the rental process. I mean, I've got a couple stories too that I'm not going to get into it, but I was glad I went with an agent that they asked me to go with them. They were meeting a potential renter, and we're so glad I went because I'm like, no, you can't do that. They were literally going to hand the agent cash for the property. I'm like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that.
Yeah.
This show weekly isn't about promoting it's not like we brought Jason in I'm just telling you straight out. I use Jason because of how good he is at what he does. You might have somebody else, but he'll be able to teach us some stuff today that will be very meaningful.
And we want to point out questions. We love questions, so if you're out there and you got questions throughout any of this, please, Kelly is out there monitoring to make sure that we're getting to the questions.
Cool.
So any questions at all, fire away.
All right, let's introduce, what was your name again? Wait, before we move on.
Sure.
Do you remember what agent number you were?
Like 9?
9.
Like
agent
9.
9.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely,
Agent 56?
53.
53. 86, I think.
Yeah.
So we're talking, and then you came a little bit after us.
Yeah, I'm like 375 or something
Oh,
like
man.
that. I know.
The agent number 9.
When I started with my home group, it wasn't even when Jeremy and Mark were at Clevin Construction, which is right next to Armless now. They had their offices inside there. No, it was before that. There was another office off of like University and the 143. That's originally where they were at when I first started. It was so long ago. Yeah. To watch all this stuff.
Yeah,
it's
it's
amazing.
I came in, they were at the Clevin Construction in Tempe, so.
I interviewed there, and then I needed an office, and they were just opening the office
So
on
right
the other
there.
side of
Yeah, the
this
other side.
complex.
I remember that little
And there were like
conference room
four
that
of
was
us
there
there.
in Clevin Construction. I remember seeing Johnny in there for the first time, and just, it was like a company meeting, and 20, 30 people.
Yeah, the whole company was there. They used to buy breakfast for the whole company. I don't know
Yeah, what happened to that?
We had 2,600 agents. What happened to that, Mark?
Yeah.
All right, so Mike Broderick has, he's also in the same kind of buy and hold, buy and flip, a little bit different. So Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself, your path into real estate, and then.
It's funny, it's
Kinda-
going to start a lot like Jason. I was in the mortgage industry for 25 years in California.
You know, how come nobody, all of us were in the mortgage business, nobody has a good ending to when we're in?
Well, because I remember when the plug was pulled. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that a little
It
bit,
was
man.
brutal.
That is just brutal.
Yeah, we'll get into, that too. Go ahead, Mike.
So anyway, 26 years old, and I was in the oil and gas business, and price of oil went from $30 a barrel to $9 in about a week. And we were out of business. I mean, you're literally out of business. A friend knew a friend who was running a national bank in Mission Viejo, California. So I interviewed, and numbers and people, and it was just kind of a natural fit.
Are you originally from California?
No, I grew up in Michigan. Grew up in
So
Michigan.
your favorite football team would be
Oh,
Michigan
University of
State?
Michigan. No, not so much. Not so much. The helmet in my office is in Michigan.
You live in with the.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, so one thing leads to another. By the time the 2000s came around, I had a pretty good sized mortgage company with a partner. We owned our own building. We were rolling, as everybody was at that time.
In California.
In California. And in 07, things started to change. 08, the world ended. By 2010, shutting that down and never having to meet payroll with a bunch of employees was very appealing. What do I know? I know real estate. So I kind of gravitated. I met a girl over here. So I still living in California.
It's always a girl, Mike.
Every good story starts with meeting a girl.
I met a girl.
So anyway, I was hopping a plane every week and coming over here and started buying properties here and started a crew, and they were building houses, and I'd come over and we would check on the, you remember 2010, we were buying houses for 30, 40, 50 grand.
Yeah.
And anyway, long story short,
Now,
that
those are
was
all
2010.
foreclosures, not new builds, right?
Buying a lot of this at the courthouse steps, but it was, short sales, wholesale deals, whatever you could at that time. The market has certainly changed since, but so 10 years ago, in that time, I've done almost 200 flips. And the smartest move I ever made, and you talk about property management and rentals, I started a self-directed IRA, and I had a certain amount of money, and stock market's never been good to me. So what do I, stick with what you know, and it's real estate. It's what we all know, right? So there's a company here in town called Vantage that does self-directed IRAs, and they allow you to buy, you can fix and flip, but to buy and hold real estate. All the rent stays in there, and it's in your IRA. Long story short, that became the beginning of, I wouldn't call it an empire, but I've got a pretty good portfolio of rentals, which is my long-term thing. I'm a lot closer to the end of the road than Jason. I've got about 4 more years and I'm done, but it's because I've, acquired a property or two every year over the last 10 years.
So you have properties that you bought and held?
Absolutely.
Oh, I thought you just flipped. I didn't know that.
No, so you find the right one, and I'll keep that one, and then you kind of flip, and you see you're making money here, but meantime,
If it caps out, keep it, right?
So you probably have, I would imagine both of you have a program or something that tells you this is a good hold or this is a good flip.
Yes and no, Mike. So I'm attracted to complexes that I know. If I market those complexes for flips, if I find the right deal in there, I'll keep it. Why reinvent the wheel? If somebody tells me they've got a property in X complex in Mesa, I've already got a rental in there, I know 90% of the questions. I tell them, okay, I walk in, stairs are on the right, bedroom underneath, blah, blah, blah. You know
Plus
all
you
the
know the
stuff.
average rent, you know all that
You know
stuff.
everything.
So,
Yeah, you know how much it's appreciated over the last
Right,
couple of
right.
years, 3 years or whatever. So
Knowledge is
I like
power.
to stick with what I know. And so anyway, long story short, the formula for me, if you can buy it on a 15-year basis, put 20% down, buy a 15-year loan, and have positive cash flows, that's a good deal. And that's tough to find.
hopefully,
Yeah,
everybody
it's-
out there just took notes what he just said.
Mhm.
So,
That's
yeah.
tough to find.
Well, can you talk a little bit, and maybe we'll get into a little bit here, but if someone wanted to start doing this, what would they do? Well, where would they start?
With
Is
the rental,
Or,
that's the rental.
or a flip. I mean, each one of you could take.
You want to take flip,
Someone
I'll take
flip.
rental.
Yeah, go
Take
ahead.
the rental, take the flip. yeah.
So, and I teach this a lot in my classes and whatnot. The first thing you can do, and I absolutely think this is the greatest thing that you could possibly do, is go look for a 3 or 4 unit and buy it with an FHA loan and move into it for a year. Because now you're going to go in, you're going to have positive cash flow from the other couple of units, and you're living in one. So it's going to drastically reduce down the amount of rent or mortgage that you're going to pay because you're collecting rents. And guess what? Now you're in the game. A year later, when you fulfilled your requirement for FHA conventional, whatever it is, you move out and you go buy another house. And now all of a sudden, because you bought that before you looked for another rental or anything like that, you were able to buy that with, what's FHA, 3.5% down, versus after the fact, when you buy multi-units, you usually got to come with 25% down.
Oh, okay.
That is the
Big
single
difference.
biggest key that I can tell you is if you can acquire that first property with that FHA.
It's an owner-occ thing, right?
Yeah, and what's even better, Johnny knows this, as a vet, you have a VA loan, you can buy it 0 down. And that is a great way to get in, get started, get your feet wet. You know, you're sitting there going like, hey man, my mortgage is $1,800 and I got 3 other doors rented out for $1,500. Guess what? I'm $300 a month on my mortgage. And I've got this asset that is just starting to move. That is the best way to start when you look at a long-term rental strategy.
And then, if they buy it, if it was someone like me, I'd want you to manage it. So
Yeah.
you would probably want a property manager. So if you were to buy it, you'd probably want a management.
Well, if you're
company to
living there,
manage
you're
it.
probably managing it
Yeah,
yourself. right?
yeah, and this
I
is what I
guess you
say.
do it
Yeah,
yourself.
you can do it yourself if you're living there for the first year, and then once you're out, now you've got that other unit that is now occupied. So now all units are occupied. Now you're positive on it. Now you pay a property manager, somebody like me, who will go in. We take care of everything on a monthly basis. That way you don't have the headache, because that's the other side of the coin. Is when you first start off in the business of rentals, is there is a lot of stuff you don't know, and there are a lot of nightmares that you can end up in because you don't know all the different ways to maneuver things. And that's where we come in, and we sit there, and more importantly, we take the phone call, or we deal with the Sunday call, the Saturday call, the early morning
Hot
call,
water
the late
heater,
night. Yeah,
busted.
all the crud that just can come up, and you're like, oh man, what do I do? Piece of cake for us, and it's that peace of mind, and that's where long term. That's the biggest thing about being in rental is long term. You definitely want to get it set up to where you can have somebody else manage it for you, because it does become a full-time job.
Yeah, talk a little bit about all the different. I mean, we don't want to go deep into like the specifics, but something a management company does. So part of it would be obviously keeping it rented.
Yeah.
Vetting the possible new tenants. I mean, talk a little bit about. I mean, I know there's a zillion stuff.
Yeah.
But let's cover like the top.
Let's talk the top. The number one, first and foremost, is vetting the tenants. There's nothing worse than getting a new building, and you're stuck. Let's say you're stuck with leases that are going to run another year, and you got some crappy tenants because the seller didn't. The seller's not going to tell you. They're going to, here's the leases, whatever. And especially now, take it or leave it. You do your own due diligence, whatever. You don't really know what you have in there, but you can end up with that. What we do is sometimes I call it shaking down the building. Is I go and I shake the tree and I see who sticks, and by just starting to kick people out, give them 5 days, send them to the attorney, get them out, turning things around, and then I go to that part where we're looking for tenants, and I'm using all the metrics that we use versus just 3 times a month in rent, making sure they don't have violent felonies in their past, everything. All the tools that me and my team have. We have different sources that we can go. We pull the credit and all this other stuff. verifying employment, et cetera, but vetting that tenant and really looking at that rental history. Have they had a solid rental history? So that way I can bring them in and feel comfortable, hey, they're gonna pay the rent every month. And that's really key, because once you get tenants in place, and now they're paying, you know they're gonna be like clockwork, then it's being able to keep an eye on the different repairs that come up, and being able, and Mike knows this.
Wait, before you go on to that, let me ask you something.
Sure.
So after the crash,
Yeah,
people's credit looked bad. I mean, there's a lot of people that lost their homes.
Yeah.
Was that really challenging? As far as the people that had to rent because they had lost their home or whatever, now it's gonna be difficult for them to buy.
it's challenging in one aspect, but in another aspect, that's where, like me, having a loan officer background, I can look at it from a standpoint of, I can see through it.
Right.
So I can see, do you have a circumstance that caused you to have a problem and you have a low credit score? Or are you just, you're underwater, under debt, and you're not gonna be a viable candidate? For instance, say you have somebody who makes $5,000 a month, right? And the rental's $1,000, they should be able to afford it, no problem, right? But if they're driving a Mercedes and they've got a Range Rover parked in the parking lot, they got student loans and they got a mountain of debt, you're like, okay, you've got about $50 a month of positive income. Like, there's no way. Hey, once the AC goes up in the summer,
You're screwed.
how are you going to afford it? So we look at it from that standpoint.
Just interject something. You talk about like the roles of the property manager. And Jason doesn't need me to plug him, but I will anyway. I will anyway. I buy a lot of property. You talk about where do you find properties. I do a great deal of direct mail to the owners. A lot of these people are out of state. They've got an in-state property manager managing the property. I can't tell you how many times I talk to these people and they tell me what the rent is. Now, again, a lot of these are out of state. They don't really know what's going on here. They don't have their finger on the pulse. I'm literally in escrow right now to purchase a property. The rent's $990. Market's $1,300.
Wow.
They've been there 8 years. They've never bumped the rent.
Wow.
Property manager is just clipping coupons, man.
Yep.
That's all he's doing. You got a great tenant in there. Now, I saw the house. It's kind of dirty. It is what it is, right?
Mhm.
8 years, you give the guy some latitude. He pays like a clock. Then come on, you can't be $300 and some under
Yeah.
market.
Yeah, I
It's
understand
insanity.
being $100 under market because they're really good, but when you're that far off, it's just being mismanaged. And we run into that a lot in the industry where people are just, leaving it
It
as
affects the
is.
rest of the market too.
It does.
I mean,
It
the other
does.
tenants are like, well, what do you mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're at 9,
But I
you're at
mean,
12.
and here's the thing is, it's going to affect a lot of owners going forward if they're not paying attention, because what's happening in Arizona and around the country is minimum wage. It's going up. Well, guess what that's going to do is that's going to entail inflation. At some point, we are going to see inflation. So as a property manager, as an owner, you have to keep up with that, because then at a certain point, you're not meeting those expenses as everything goes up, but your tenants are having more money that they can pay that rent. So you have to stay with that. Otherwise, you're losing money.
And I want to apologize for Jason's language. We try not to use words like inflation.
The I word. Stop speaking the truth.
It can affect your
Start lying to people more, right?
If you're $300 under market,
Yeah.
and you're on a lease, it affects your ability to sell the property.
Yeah, think about it.
The market
That's
value is
$600
just,
a year.
who wants to buy that? You
You
get
kill
to
the
sell this
cap
guy
rate.
for 9 months into the future, right?
What percent, question to both of you, what percent of rentals are you seeing people from out of town? Or are they more people that are just moving around here?
I would say, based on what I've been seeing lately, 40%, maybe 50% of
People
people
moving
are
here.
coming,
Half.
California specifically, are coming here, coming in town. Illinois is another big one too. We're getting a lot of them. And so we're seeing a lot of people coming in and going, I'm moving into town, I've got a job, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay.
That's a huge
Yeah, it's a
number.
lot, man. The influx is just, they keep coming.
Yeah.
They keep coming, and it's because the other states get so expensive, and that, it's a concern for us somewhere down the road. But, just having so many people here, but the way Arizona's been going, it just, who knows?
Jason, you know I have the billboards in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I was laughing the other day with Mike. I said, so the governor of Illinois, this Pritzker guy, I think I'm gonna start donating to his re-election campaign. He was just feeding me. There was things on Facebook, coronavirus, we can tax that.
Yeah.
Rioters, we can tax that. Protest, no problem, we can tax. It's like, oh, what are you gonna tax next? And you know, so we don't make this political.
Yeah.
There are the people I'm talking to from Illinois and California, same thing.
Same thing.
They're coming here for a couple different reasons: traffic, politics, taxes, cost of living,
Yeah.
all kinds of different
Cost
stuff.
of
And the stuff that I'm hearing more and more, and again, I'm not making this a political show, is there's a lot of people that say you just get to the point where it's like, really,
Yeah.
what's the next thing that's going to happen? And then taxes are it's
Yeah.
amazing.
You and I have talked about this. I know you and I have talked about this. Guys, I don't pretend that I know all the micro markets all over the country or whatever, but
Right.
what state would you rather be in right now with everything that's going on than Arizona?
Oh.
Seriously. There's so much positive here in relation to certainly California, Illinois,
Yeah.
whatever. This is the best state going.
Yep.
And I think, we may have dips, and I'm not pretending I'm some seer, but how can you not be bullish about where we're headed?
I think it was really cool. I was talking to my wife about this last night, oddly enough. We were talking about, because I was telling her, man, I sure would like to live somewhere green, North Carolina. We were just talking about the South and whatnot, and then she was like, oh, no, not the humidity. And I was like, yeah, no, you're right. And I was all, well, what about Oregon? Oregon would be kind of cool and everything. And she's all, yeah, but a little too cold. And she came from California about 4 years ago, and she said that exactly. She's all, where are we going to find a better place than Scottsdale? I'm like, you really can't. In many ways, it's California without California. It's a little hotter, but you get all the stuff that we like over there without having a lot of stuff that we don't like.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day that's considering moving here from Illinois, and the subject got around all the stuff that's going on in the world and all that right now, and how's Arizona being affected. I said, there's one thing that Arizona has that I don't know many other states that have. I think Austin can claim this too. Matter of fact, I know Austin can. But the majority of people that are here from somewhere else, all those people chose to be here.
Yeah.
They moved from somewhere to be here.
Yep.
And I think people are just happier here. It's like you walk through the mall, and people are, hey, how's it going? Whereas if you're in New York, hey, how's it going? I'm in Chicago. People are they're just happier here because there's just all that.
Well, there's a lot to do here. I mean, you get pretty much all the climates, right? Most of them. So if you want snow, it's only 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
Two and a half hours away.
You're actually
So-
3.5 hours away from the ocean.
From the
Yeah,
ocean, right,
absolutely.
right. So it's kind of neat because you do have all the different things. You have the ocean, you have the mountains, you have the snow, you have the heat if you want it. And it does get pretty hot here. But
I had a buddy that proved it. He went snow skiing in Flagstaff one morning and came down and went swimming.
I did that.
That's
In fact,
awesome.
when I first moved here, I had never been snow skiing, so some of my friends were saying, "Hey, you see the snow in the mountains? Because it's kind of cool. You can down here in the valley, you can see the snow in the mountains." And I think it was mid-April or late April, and we had a late snowfall one year. And they were like, "Hey, we should go up skiing." I'm like, "I've never been skiing." They said, "That's it, we're going." So we literally went up, skied, spent the night, came back, got on my buddy's boat, and went water skiing. And
That's awesome.
And they called all my friends from Chicago. I'm like, "Hey, guess what I did this weekend?" And I'm like, "I went snow skiing and water skiing." So got hung up on a lot, but yeah, you're right. I mean, Arizona kind of does have a little bit of everything.
Anybody that has questions, I'm right here. You can ask any question to Jason or Mike or
Absolutely.
Mike or I about
Yeah.
rentals, and we've talked mostly about buying and holding. I want to get into the flipping kind of thing a little bit, Mike, and talk about the pitfalls that you don't see, and because you can really
Or how to get started. So I know we've all done a little bit of flipping here, but
Here's the
how-
thing.
But real quick, anybody that has questions as we go, I can take the questions right to these.
We are in flipping central USA.
Yeah.
All the great things that make Arizona great have brought everybody here to do the flipping thing. There's way too many HGTV shows out there, too many seminars, blah, blah, blah. And the barrier to entry here is so low because relatively speaking, our real estate's cheap, right? So it makes buying property here very difficult, in all honesty. Doesn't mean it can't be done. You ask me where to start. What I would suggest, if somebody is serious about it, is I would suggest speaking within their sphere of influence and just letting people know if you know anybody that's looking to get out of a property in a less than traditional manner, please give me a call. And that's what I do. I know a lot of people, a lot of agents, and I've got some door knockers and all that kind of stuff, right? There's a million ways to find, but it's not easy. You can market, but the results of that, in the 10 years I've done it, my direct mail results went from like 3% response to 1/10 of 1%.
Oh, wow.
And the math on that is atrocious, right?
Right.
So that's just indicative of what's really going on here. Doesn't mean it can't be done. If you live in a certain area, the old way was you see a house that looks abandoned, you reach out, get on the county website, and send them a letter.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. You can do the same thing in a condo complex, etc. The one thing I would say, you asked me how to start, I would say how not to start.
Okay.
Don't pay somebody 10 grand
Yeah.
and go sit in a weekend seminar and let them
Yep.
teach you how to flip.
Yep.
Because those guys are teachers, they're not doers.
So, I don't know if you knew it or not, but I worked at a company called Info Closure, and we help people buy properties at auction. And the owner of Info Closure, a guy by the name of Rick, great guy, he wrote a book, and actually the title of the book was Exit First. Know how you're getting out
Yeah, absolutely.
before you get in. A great book. I highly suggest it. It's a great strategic book on before you buy anything, you have to know how you're getting out or holding.
Best advice I ever got was you make money when you buy real estate, not when you sell it. It sounds so basic, and we probably all heard that, but that's what you have to keep in mind when you're buying. You can't get excited about, oh my God, there's a deal here. Well, you're going to do it all, and if you're a weekend warrior and you're going to do your first deal, and you're the one out there on weekends, you don't want to donate your time. The idea is to make money. It's great to get an education, but
Work with your sphere. Talk with talk with some agents or people that have done it, so you get a feel for it. And then
absolutely.
There's probably different ways to go about it. So there's obviously cash buy, right? You talked a little bit about self-directed IRA, right?
Correct.
Oh, and then I would imagine there's people use hard money as well, or loans.
And there's no shortage in any of that stuff.
Yeah, right. So we just have to kind of figure out where you fit with all that.
Here's another thing, Mike. It's like I've got 2 searches set up on the MLS. One is for fixers and one is for tenant occupied. Every day, anything that happens to those properties, back on the market, pending, closing, me listing, whatever, I get an alert, on the MLS, right? I'll wake up to those. So all over the valley, I got the whole county on there, and I'm looking to see, and I probably buy 3 or 4 properties a year, just with that method, and that's as passive as it can get. It's up on your lap.
Could you buy more, Mike, if you were more aggressive, or is 3 your comfort level?
I have 5 going. That's kind of.
Oh no, he's saying 3 off the MLS.
3 off the MLS.
Yeah.
I did 18 last year.
I was gonna say,
I only have 4 right now, and I peeled one off, and I haven't replaced.
Is there a level, or is it all monetary, like that decides?
It's also a brain damage level, man.
Yeah.
You get 5 properties in, there's a lot going on. You spend a lot of money, and all the rehab and all
But I would
that.
imagine that price points matter too, right? So
A lot.
the lower price points are probably going to move quicker. But if you were to flip something that was 700,000 or $1 million,
whole
it probably
different deal.
moves a little different, right?
It's funny, Mike. I am no expert in anything over about 350, 325, 350.
When I was down at the courthouse steps with Info Closure, and every hedge fund was in town. They were selling 40, 50 properties a day.
That's a whole nother.
A day. And
Yeah, too.
then it went like this. It was like, yay. And it just stopped. And
And that's the
now,
thing, it's so hard when you have that kind of level going against you, and then you have to be really smart, because those hedge funds, they can afford to pay a lot more than you are, because they don't care about making the margin you do, because they're doing it all in volume.
And they're going to hold
Yep.
it too.
And
And they
they'll
weren't going
hold
to flip it.
Yep.
Their idea was to hold, and they have crews. They're paying a heck of a lot less than you and I would pay.
Because
to
of
do
our-
the same
You
work.
really got to know what you're doing when you go down to the courthouse.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's,
Yeah.
you've heard stories before where they buy an house and they really bought a second lien or
Oh, yeah.
something like that.
and the guys in San Francisco that they caught all colluding with each other, hey, don't bid on this one. I
Oh, yeah.
really want this.
That goes on.
They busted them.
Yeah.
They all went to
Oh, yeah,
jail.
That goes.
That's
no judge.
Yeah,
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
We knew everybody down at the courthouse steps, and I could have told you exactly that if that guy does something with his ear, or that guy takes his hat and turns it around backwards.
He's in on that.
There was all kinds of signals
Right.
going. That's
Before-
a dangerous place.
Before I left Monterey, I would go down to the court steps, and I would audit them and check it out and whatnot. There was a lady there. She controlled the whole thing. It's a small town. So everything she wanted, she would bid and she would take. And you'd basically, it was almost like going over to the Don and asking him, is it okay if I buy this?
Just
Trying to get the Godfather's permission. Yeah,
I knew people that would only buy it, was it Tiffany and Bosco?
Oh, yeah.
They would only buy a Tiffany and Bosco because that was an indoor thing and you couldn't, there wasn't a way to signal people. But there was guys down at the courthouse steps on Jefferson, you knew if one guy had his hat on backwards or if one guy took his coat off, there was all kind. It's like baseball, dude. It was,
Sign sheet.
yeah, I mean, it was ridiculous. It was crazy.
The Astros are down there stealing
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Let's get into that too at some point about baseball. Also. All right, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so if you were getting in, it's obviously I like to know your exit strategy, but then it's probably work with your sphere, talk with some people, get a feel for what the process is going to take. Because obviously, once you do start searching and finding a property, you're going to need contractor, you're going to need different people that are going to help flip, and you got to know you probably got to know what costs are for things like tile or things like paint.
That's a whole thing.
So that's
Let's
a whole
get into
other
that in a
thing,
second because we got a question before but I do want to discuss
That is a whole thing.
Okay, so Lisa asked if someone is looking to buy a house as an investment to fix up and rent, what are the best areas of town? And then a follow-up question is, how is our rental market in Arizona right now?
Rental market, Lisa, is red hot still. We thought we were going to have a lot of effects from the COVID, but it hasn't. It hasn't really slowed us down. We thought, I was really concerned that initially we were going to have a lot of renters because the governor put out a stay on evictions. It hasn't. We've seen everything continuing on, and we see rents continuing to go up. So rents are very strong. In my opinion, I think that depending on what your strategy is, parts of West Phoenix are really good. Glendale, I love Glendale. I call myself the king of Glendale because I have so many rentals over there. But those parts are really good. Anywhere close to a university and whatnot, if the entry point makes sense, and that's really what it comes down to, Lisa.
What do you mean by entry?
So entry point, the purchase price.
Oh.
So you have to really do those numbers, I think, and that's what I do. I go,
This is such
does
good
it
information.
make sense? If I buy this, am I going to be positive at the end of the day, or am I going to have enough of a return for it to make sense to me to absorb two really important things you need to consider. Number one, don't forget, at some point your renter is going to move out, so you are going to have a vacancy. That means you need to save up for that day. Number two, you're going to have repairs. Those two things are unforeseen costs. You can try to, you budget for them by putting money away into a reserve, but if those two things hit at the same time, you can really go south. And if your margin is thin, what I mean by your margin is after you pay, if you have a mortgage, after you pay your property manager, after you pay your taxes, everything else, how much are you left over? What do you net?
The cap formula.
Yeah, what do you net at the end of the month? If that net is very slim, it could get rough, and you better have some reserves ready to go. If that net's really big, and that's why I buy fourplexes a lot, is because my net, I'm so positive at the end of the month, I can store that away, and I've got a big bucket over here of cash that I can just grab, and if anything fixes, because and it doesn't happen overnight, but over time, you put it aside, rainy day fund. That's the key, is when you're buying that rental, have that rainy day fund, and have some margin, be cash flow positive. I mean, if you can absorb the negative, that's fine, but consider that, vacancy and repairs, in my opinion, most important things.
So Lisa, red hot is
Yeah.
Jason's answer. And I know, Mike, when I was looking for properties for you, and I still actually have that search in my computer, I know you have certain areas you like to, that's your comfort zone.
And that's a lot of that's dictated by price.
Yep. Like inside the
North
loop.
Scottsdale is not my radar, right?
Yeah.
But from a rental standpoint, and I'm just going to kind of augment what he said. To me, it's about the location. How quickly can you get somewhere? One of my favorite places is North Phoenix, where the 51, the 17, and the 101 are all, the 85024, 85027, 85032. Those zip codes, love them. West Side, the West, 85037.
Again,
on the west
entry
side.
point.
Very
Dollar,
good, couple
very
$100,000 homes, very affordable, and the market out there is on fire.
Yep.
I love Mesa. I've got rentals at Dobson and the 60, the Mesa Community College and Banner Hospital. Right there.
Yep.
Those are great, employment centers, etc. ASU, you're never going to go wrong buying in Tempe
Yeah.
because the ASU is so massive, right? So just kind of think outside the box there a little bit, like what's really going on, and then if you want to get an idea of where the property values are going, Zillow has a tool in there. You can dial it back and say, where's this property now? Where was it 5 years ago? And you can compare that to other
Yeah.
areas. It's just a super easy little tool. So you can say, okay, 5 years ago this property was 120, now it's 2. How does that compare with whatever else I'm looking at?
So let me ask you this, so I'm not adverse to Zillow. Matter of fact, I tell my clients, it's a good tool. You should be on there. You should.
Well, they're all on there.
And everybody, I mean, if you did a poll of 100 people and said, if you wanted to look up real estate, what website would you go to? I would imagine Zillow would be the number one answer.
Probably.
Okay. So as far as rentals, is their data more closer to accurate than it is on?
It's just another one.
It's just
it's
another
just one more.
What, and I'll speak just a little bit to that, is that as someone who does listings for rentals, sometimes I just put it on Zillow rather than putting it fully on the MLS.
Everybody's there.
Because everybody's there, exactly.
Right.
Everybody's there, and then unless I'm hitting my agents and I get people doing searches and everything, everybody's going to Zillow, so you might as well use it, and it's free. It's free to list.
Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit here, and this works for. It's definitely really important to buying and flipping, but it's also important to holding. So those costs of when the hot water heater goes, or you got to replace the tile, or so Mike and I have known each other a long time. I kind of know a lot of his vendors. We share. How important is it to have those vendor relationships when it comes time to do flips? Because that's all part of the equation. That's all part of the exit strategy when you buy, right?
It is. I would not
Sylvester
try to,
and
all
those names
right,
all the time,
right.
yeah.
But to me, I wouldn't spend a ton of time building that team prior to finding a property. And I say that sounds counterintuitive. You got to know who's going to do the work, and you got to get bids. I know it sounds like a lot. Like, how do I know how much to bid if I don't know how much it's going to cost? Well, there's a lot of tools online. There's books you can read. Again, seminars are not the answer, but there's ways to back into those numbers to at least get close. If you build a team, let's say that I need my AC guy, I need my plumber, I need my electrician, I need my construction, I need my handyman guy. It takes you 6 months to find a property. Those guys they're long gone. They don't even know who you are 6 months later. So, and right now it's tough to find guys. It really is. I mean, these guys are all busy as heck, right? So it's important, Johnny, but I don't think you need to build that unless you're really serious and you're eminently going to find property.
Huh.
If I would start that process, sorry.
No, go ahead.
But you could probably start the process once you have something under contract,
Well, that's
right?
yeah.
So then you can start to figure that. I do know, and as you know off the top of your head, if I were to buy a 2,000 square foot house, you already have an idea of what it's going to cost.
$4 a foot for
right.
$4 a foot.
Because you learn what paint per square foot is on a house, if it's two-tone, regular. I did some flips too back in the day, but I know when I learned after doing a number of flips exactly based on square footage how much exactly it was going to cost me to renovate that house.
It's the surprises that kill you.
Right,
But you got to build that in.
Well, you always got to put that in there.
You got a
Yeah.
contingency
Yeah.
fund in there,
Well,
based on square footage, etc.
Based on all that stuff, right.
But you go in and there's mold or something. It's the surprises that kill you.
I've talked to probably 25 agents in my home group that have run situations by me, and I'm happy to do that. They've got a deal that they think, they've done a flip, or they've got an investor, and now they want to do it themselves. Want to run something. I've always been wide open to stuff like that. I'm easy to find. If anybody ever wanted to do that, I know you the same way.
Absolutely.
You answered so many questions.
I was just about to say, if I was a brand new agent at my home group and I was thinking about doing flips, first and foremost, go to the mastermind and start asking questions. I need a plumber, I need a this, and this. And guess what? Take Mike to lunch.
Yep.
And he's a cheap lunch too, but he is a wealth of knowledge, and you sit there with with a lot of our veteran agents here who have done a ton of flips, and you can just ask them and pick their brains, and you can start to develop a list really quick of handymen, plumbers, electricians, and stuff like that. Because most of these guys are not just fully employed by each individual agent. They're independent contractors. And so you start to develop your list, and as you're starting to, get your opportunities to buy and whatnot, you've sat down with Mike and said, hey, how much is flooring? You sat down with Johnny, hey, what do you think about roofing and stuff like this? You start to get all these costs in line, and then as you're getting ready to put that offer in, now you can start going through the network here. Who do you know? Who do you know? It's amazing, a glut of information just by posting or asking a question in the mastermind that people will give to you.
Yeah, let me add too, for any realtor, if you're a newer realtor, even if you're not buying and flipping or buying and holding, having vendors is clutch. I mean, I can't tell you how many referrals I've gotten from my AC guy where he went in and, I can tell you a $1.2 million listing that I got in Fountain Hills because the lady's husband died and she's like, the house is too big for me. He went up there to service her air conditioner. He goes, I'll call my buddy Johnny Walker. He'll take care of it. That's my AC guy.
Well, I mean, as agents, we're the concierge of everything anyway. We should have these relationships to refer out if someone needs.
What is it about electricians? Are they all flakes? I can't find an electrician.
Well, it used to be painters. Painters were the notorious ones, right? They were all.
But it's like they got zapped too much.
I have a
Okay, you'll be there 2 tomorrow. Yeah, I'll be there 2 tomorrow. And you call him, it's like, yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, tomorrow was a day ago.
Yeah, electricians are tough
Do you
right
have
now.
another question?
Nope. Nope.
Something else, just real quick. Okay, do you do a chicken and the egg? Do you find a team first or do you find a property? If you find a property, chances are you're going to figure it out. Okay, you know what? This house needs a lot. Go ahead and make your list of everything. Get a 3 to 5 day free look with the seller and say, I need to put together my bid, etc. And then you can kind of work it together. That's another way to go. Where you're like,
Yeah.
I know this is a deal. Every house is a deal, just based on price.
Versus buying at county court steps, because you got to get ready to go, and it's like quick. You don't really have that time. That's where it gets a little difficult.
So my thing when I was at Infoclosure is I would make money if realtors brought people to the auction, and after a year I was like, they're never going to do this because they kept asking the same question. Well, where's title line? When does the Benzer come in? Where's the inspection? They're like, here's the inspection. Does it have a doggy door? Can you fit through it? There's your inspection.
Yep.
You have break and enter. You have to, I mean, I'm just telling you.
Through the window.
And then all those shows were, what was the property
wars.
or whatever. They asked Infoclosure to be on it, and the owner was like, they came over and were around the office and they're like, okay, now yell at him. And the owner was like, I'm not yelling at him. That's not how I do. Well, just for the show. And he's like, no, I don't yell at my employee.
Yeah.
So he was like, no, we don't want to do it.
It's funny watching those shows and whatnot, how not real it is.
Oh, the best
It is.
was like it's a foreclosure and they walk in and the time is on the stove. Dude, if it's a foreclosure, there's no power. I'm sorry. It's 10:43.
It's like, okay, we're going to crack the door and we're going to get our first look, but the cameraman's already in.
Oh my God, it's a disaster.
Cut to a commercial.
Who's the guy that says, I'll buy the White House? What was that guy's
Doug
name?
Hopkins.
Doug Hopkins.
Doug Hopkins.
Actually, he's a good guy.
Doug's a real good guy.
You guys have actually met Doug?
Yeah.
I've seen him on TV.
I was on a panel with him down at
Yeah.
the School of Real Estate.
Yeah, he's actually a good guy.
So I wanted to ask a question. Time frame. So I know buy and hold. You're obviously want to hold it for as long as you can. But there's probably a time frame versus rental and flip. So flip, how quickly you want to get that turned around back on the market and sell. And then on the rental side, how long do you hold? I mean, do you watch for when you should sell and then maybe buy 2 more or something? I mean,
Sure,
how does that work?
On the rental side, I think, as far as having a time frame, that's something that each individual kind of has to look at and go, what's my goal? Is your goal to pay it off and have it as part of your retirement? That's kind of how I see it. Is a lot of things that I acquire, it's because I want to go in, I want to leverage out long term, and then at some point they start paying off. So at a certain point right now, I've taken a lot of my portfolio, and I initially I have bought with different partners, and we were able to get in at lesser costs and things like that. Now I've refinanced a lot of it into a 15-year, but with a full intention of, this isn't a 15-year payoff, this is a 10 or even 8-year payoff, because I'm starting to accelerate the payments, and then as I get closer and closer, get to that mark where I can pay it off. Yeah, absolutely. And then think of it this way, each one you paid off, you don't have all that money that you've unlocked, and now you can take care of this one and this one and this one, and it snowballs so fast. Other times it's, I'm gonna do this and I've got, so let's say I've got a 5-year period. That really comes down to, does the market get red hot? Like it's gotten, it's slowed down temporarily in March, and now all of a sudden, I've got one investor who's just, he's getting rid of all of his stuff, and they're all 3 and 4 unit complexes, and the last week and a half, everything's under contract again. And it's just, when do you find that point? Or a lot of times what happens is you go in and you're like, hey, can I hedge my bets a little bit? You bring in your buddy. You're like, hey, let's go together on this. He may have a different time frame for you. And so it becomes a buyout phase and stuff like that. I think initially I always say it's like you just try to get in and you start surviving. Okay? You survive, you're just making it, then you start to get to a point where you're growing a little bit, and then you're thriving, and then you get to a point, and sometimes it's like, maybe it's time to go. And I had that happen with a couple of them where you get in and you don't know what you don't know. And you find out that no matter what you do over time, the neighborhood is still going to send you the type of tenants that are going to continue to make your life rough year after year after year. And at a certain point, the headache is no longer worth it. You're like, you know what, if I can take this building, take my profits and do a 1031 if you can, move it over here, either less headache, bigger, whatever it may be, and just be in a better situation, then that's the time to go. But man, a lot of times you're just not going to know until you get in there. You get in there, you find it. So,
On the flip side.
On flip, man, I try to be in and out in 90 days.
Okay.
That's optimal. If you can do that, then you turn in your money. Perfect. This is
From acquisition to sale.
Yeah.
from the day you close escrow. But see, the problem is now that money's got to get redeployed, right? You don't generally go right into another property on day 91.
Right.
You have to find the property, whatever that period of escrow. Sometimes it's 3 days, sometimes it's 3 weeks. You got to redeploy it and start your 90. You're really going to turn that. This is my business. If I can turn my money 3 times a year, I'm pleased with that.
So I'm pretty good, because what would you say the average, what's the average return on?
Well, see, I leverage it too. So I've got favorable financing. I've got a very good friend that has a cadre of investors behind him. I put 10% down, and then all the improvements are out of my pocket.
Okay.
So I finance 90% at 10% interest,
Wow.
no points,
Yeah.
no nothing. So I put 10% down and then all the improvements. So I may have $40,000 into a property, and if you make 20 on it, you make a 50% return in 90 days. It's not too bad.
Right, but you do that 3 times a year.
Well, exactly. And then you've got 4 or 5 going at one
Yeah,
time.
right.
It works out pretty good.
and let me jump in on that really quick. That is a great deal that Mike's got in there. For you guys that are just starting out, you're probably not going to find that deal. And if you've been to seminars and stuff like that, they have this whole misnomer of use everybody else's money and this, that, and the other. Makes sense, right? If you could do that, great. But usually more often than not, that what happens is either you get unfavorable terms, or people are like, you have no track record, so you can't get by. So in a way, you do have to have something. You gotta, whether it's you scratch it together with a friend, relative, something like that. You're gonna need something to get started. Like it's gonna be, if you can do it and you can get somebody to finance 100%, that's awesome. But it's very rare. So just like I said, I want to be realistic with them telling this. That's one of the barriers I saw the first time I started doing it was, well, where's your skin in the game?
Right.
Yeah.
It's the old, I have bad credit or no credit. What's
Right.
worse?
Right.
Or good credit. It's like
Yeah.
bad credit sometimes is you got to build up a little bit of a portfolio.
Yeah.
And I would imagine if you have financing, that you want to hit that 90-day mark, right? Because
Absolutely.
the cost
Yeah.
starts going up the longer
Yeah.
you hold
So
it.
the juice
right?
is running.
The juice, right.
Yeah.
A codicil on that note that I have with my buddy is I guarantee them 90 days interest. So if I can turn it in 60, which I can, that's hard to do.
That is
But if you
really
can
hard
turn
to
it
do.
in 60, they get a 30-day interest bonus, which I'm happy to do because I just hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
I did this thing in 60
But
days.
you as a buyer want to really get that
Sooner
project
than-
done because
Yeah.
it could start costing
Right,
you after
and
that.
these shows, and I watch all the same shows everybody else does. Those guys typically they refer to financing and they've got a holding cost, and the accurate shows will build that in because that's real.
Yeah,
You know,
right,
I mean,
right.
that really is. You got to build that into your model. Whatever your interest costs are going to be, and then you add a month for surprises.
You add them up, the surprises. And
Right, and then something will go on the market and it doesn't sell in 3 days like you hoped it would, right? That's the other variable.
So I would say, based on the conversation we've had today, probably the most important thing to take out of this is that you gotta have a plan.
Absolutely.
Before you even start looking for a project, you gotta have a plan.
Yeah, and I like that you guys
Right,
are
true.
saying, sit down with someone, do
Absolutely.
due diligence, ask a lot of questions, and
Yeah.
get an idea of, what it's gonna take. Hopefully you guys have all learned a lot from this today. There was some great stuff here.
Awesome.
About, where to get started, what to expect and all that good stuff, so.
Well, it's also, it's what everybody already knows. We're talking to realtors here. You guys are all looking at property all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you're farming a certain area and this is a $300,000 neighborhood and you can pick something up for $210,000 and it's a pretty new build, buy it.
Yeah.
Forget about contractor,
Right.
buy it.
Buy it.
You'll figure it out.
At that point, you realize there's enough spread, right?
Absolutely.
And if you, as an agent, if you're a newer agent, learning how to comp a property and learning how to, what after repair value is, kind of what it takes, what houses are selling remodeled, when they're not, you can, like you said, in that spread, 210, they're selling for 300.
Yeah.
It's no brainer. Yeah. So.
But you can make catastrophic mistakes. I mean,
Yeah.
one little wrong
Yeah,
turn
yeah.
and your profit's out the window. And even if you break even, you're lucky. I mean, there's ways you can lose. I had a buddy did it and lost $20,000 on it. Trying to flip the house at 19th Avenue in Indian School. It was an older house, tore out walls. He did all this, put in way over what he should have as far as appliances and all that. All the appliances got stolen one night, and it's just, you just, there's so many things.
So many things that can happen.
There's so many things that can go wrong, so.
Don't flip a house with a solar lease.
Boom.
That's a nugget, man. Solar lease equals no flip.
Oh, there you go.
Don't do it.
Well, you heard it.
Don't flip a house with a solar lease.
Losing money, man.
Alright, so once again, Shelley Carr is our sponsor today from One Guard Home Warranty. She's one of my partners in my team. I don't know if you guys use Shelley or not. One Guard's a great company. Their home warranties are awesome. She's giving away a lunch for 4. Again, it doesn't have to include Mike and I, but it is highly recommended. But the first person to type in Mike's favorite football team.
I can tell you what it is.
No, you can't say it.
I can't say it?
No, you can't say
Okay.
it. So the first person to tell us who Mike's favorite college football team is, we'll
Should we
take
give a
away
hint?
no hints.
Give
You
a
had to
clue?
be watching the show. That's the whole idea.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Well,
that's the
should
whole
we give
idea.
a clue?
No,
No clues?
no clues.
So they have to find out?
If they watch the show, they'll know. We discussed it earlier.
Yeah.
We did?
Yeah.
We did.
Did you miss it?
I missed it.
No,
Oh,
you
man.
actually commented on it. You just didn't know it.
I just didn't know.
All right, so anything else, guys? I mean, that was a big nugget right there. Never flip a house with solar lease.
I'm sure you've got like worst mistake ever, right?
Oh, my
Worst
God.
mistake. We all worst mistake that you can make, I think, is if you're in a historical district, not knowing the different things that you can and cannot do. Be very careful if you are in, if you're in Canto, you're in Garfield, you're in, wherever. If you're there, go find out what you can and can't do, because it can get tricky really quick, and the permitting and everything else, and it's rough. So, I think if you can keep it simple, we used to have an old saying, lipstick and rouge, paint and flooring, something simple like that. Going to be much better off when you have to start moving walls and this, that, and the other. If permits are coming in, it can get ugly really quick.
I'll throw something out that I learned too, though. If you're working with first-time home buyers and you're out looking at properties, and sometimes realtors don't realize what they're putting into the listing and don't realize if they put FHA on a listing and they haven't owned it for 90 days, it doesn't qualify for FHA. That could be a big mistake too.
Yep.
That's something that a lot of realtors, they figure, oh yeah, well, we'll take all that stuff, and they just don't know. So there's a little nugget from
How about
me.
on the flip end?
Worst mistake, or well, the solar lease was certainly one of them. But Jason really hit on something very important. If you're going to get into this and you're attracted to flipping a house, your first deal should be a very light duty.
Yeah.
Very light.
Yeah.
Painting carpet to the extent you do it. A couple of surprises, maybe you do a little facelift on the kitchen, but short of that.
Don't turn walls.
No, no.
Yeah, well, you know, crawl before you walk. That kind of thing. Don't, yeah, absolutely. Do not take on some medieval castle that just happens to sit in the middle of town. It's like, don't do it. Keep it simple. Same thing in rental. I usually tell people, start with a condo, start with a single family house. Don't jump into a 400 unit complex right away. It's going to be just a nightmare. Just start simple, get your feet wet, and grow into it. It's a long-term game, guys.
I want to thank you guys for coming in.
thanks
today.
so much.
Thanks for having us, guys.
I'm going to end with one real quick thing. So Mike and I have been buddies for a long time, and over the past couple weeks and couple months, Mike and I have had some incredible conversations. He sits at one end of the political spectrum, I sit at the other, but we're friends, and we've had some amazing, amazing conversations by opening up our ears and seeing things different ways. Don't know if I swayed you, don't know if you swayed me, but I would tell everybody, listen. Everybody start listening. I think that's us older guys would tell you that's our lesson for the week. Listen.
All
All right, everybody have a great week.
Yeah, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday.
We're thinking about maybe having Kelly on the show next week.
Yeah,
All right.
Ooh, that'd be
Scandalous.
great. I don't know if we got an answer on the question.
Talent's going out.
Any guesses? Anybody guess?
Not yet.
Not yet? All right.
See you, everybody.
See you. Have a great weekend.
Boom.
Inside.
That was awesome.
Yay.